If you asked me 4 years ago if I would have a podcast ever, I would laugh in your face, literally. Because it is not easy to put yourself out here like that. But I finally just stopped thinking about what I'm gonna say, who I'm gonna do it with, what I look like, all these things that are just going to take time before you can ever do anything, because you're never gonna be perfect. All you can do is start. And the only way to start is to start. This has helped me become more confident because I have learned how to just have a conversation. And that was something that I struggled with my entire life. I still struggle with it, to be honest, but it is an amazing thing to do when you put yourself in a vulnerable position. I cannot stress it enough. Put yourself in a vulnerable position where you can learn from others, which will eventually lead you to becoming the confident version of yourself. Hi everyone, my name is Mika Sall. I am your host. This is Quest for Knowledge, episode 5. And if you're new here, welcome. And if not, welcome back. Today I will be doing an episode all by myself for the first time. I mean, I've done one for history class by myself, which is a little different because it's only going to the teacher, right? But this one, of course, it's going out to the world, whoever wants to watch it or listen. So today I will be talking about how my anxiety led to me being insecure, which eventually led to me being confident. So a little context, I've had anxiety basically my entire life, and I have tried everything from therapy. I mean, I went to 10 therapists all the way to Zoloft, which is an antidepressant. I used it for anxiety. I stopped for a little bit. Now I'm back on it, which has honestly taken the edge off for me personally. But a little more context about how my anxiety started. What kind of anxiety did I have? So when I was younger, according to my parents, I had separation anxiety specifically from them, right? So when I went to birthday parties, I would be attached to my mom by the hip. When I went to school orientations, attached to my mom by the hip, those kind of things. So I would just always be on my mom's hip or my dad's, mostly my mom's though. I was just so scared of being judged. I didn't know who I was. I mean, I don't believe that you ever know who you fully are, but I was just so lost in who I was, even when I was 5. Like, I would get attached to people because I had separation anxiety, and if I thought that I would drift from somebody, I would just get even more attached to them, which is obviously not healthy. And of course, I think separation anxiety is okay to an extent, but of course I passed that extent. So after my separation anxiety, I honestly couldn't tell you when it went away. I think I still deal with it in some ways, but of course it got better as I grew up. I'm 17 now, if you didn't know, so it did get better. I don't know how it got better, but it did. Then I dealt with social anxiety, and I think honestly social anxiety was a factor of my separation anxiety. So I would not go out. I would be so shy, which shyness is okay. It's normal, of course, but my experience with being shy also impacted my ability to hang out with people because I was so insecure. I would just think about what people were thinking about me, what I was going to say next, what I looked like, how I talked, everything, every little thing. And these are all symptoms of anxiety, right? Which led me to being insecure, of course. And in 5th grade, I would cry every Sunday before school because I didn't want to go. Just that. I did not want to go. I was so scared that I would be made fun of. I barely had any friends, which sucks, especially in middle school, because these are very important formative years before entering the years where you figure out who you are, who you want to become. So that was definitely challenging for me. Um, my parents decided to put me in therapy, so I started seeing therapists. I went from one to the next to the next. I eventually went through 10 therapists. I believe that therapy didn't really help me in the ways that it helps other people. I definitely did learn a few things, such as irrational thinking versus rational thinking, which I'll get to this in a second, but my dad helped me with that part of anxiety and coping more than therapists did. And I realized that my therapist shared the same last name as me, lived in the same house as me, and paid for my education. And that person is my dad, and honestly still is to this day. So in 5th grade, after I went through all these therapists, I actually believe that I went to therapy all the way until 8th grade, but throughout going through the therapist, my dad was the constant therapist throughout that experience with anxiety. And we actually dealt with it together because if you didn't know, my dad, Adam Sall, shout out, also has anxiety, and he's dealt with it his whole life. I don't want to speak for him, but just putting it out there. So that's part of why he helps me a lot, because when you experience something yourself, it's easier to help other people, of course. So he taught me irrational thinking versus rational thinking. I would sit down with him every morning after freaking out the Sunday night before about going to school. So the next morning, Monday morning, would come. I would walk into his room and we would say this quote. Okay, today I will be my true, authentic self. Sorry, it took me a moment to get it because I stopped saying it, but that was game changing for me. And I recommend that you say it if you struggle with being your authentic, true self, especially if you have anxiety, which leads to being insecure, of course. So I started saying that for like 2 months straight. It helped me a lot. I started going to school without crying less and less and less. Eventually, I stopped crying the Sunday before, which thank God, because it was so hard. Every Sunday, imagine crying every Sunday because you had to go somewhere you didn't want to be, and there was no way to control it. So the next part of me being insecure because of anxiety started because I had social anxiety in 6th grade, and it was impossible, felt impossible at the time to just have friends, even hang out with people. There's no words to explain it. I'm trying to think of the words to explain how social anxiety feels, and it's something that you can only understand if you have experienced it to the extent that it becomes your whole life. And it did for me, and it sucked. And it eventually made me switch schools, which I dealt with anxiety again in 9th grade because I was new to school. I didn't know anybody. I was lost. I felt lost in who I was. I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't even know what I liked. So I started talking to my dad again. We just found ways to cope. And 9th grade was so rough. So rough. But then 10th grade came and I started Zoloft again, just like I had in middle school. And it definitely did take the edge off. I finally showed up to school, happy to be there. I made new friends. I was outgoing. It was a great year for me. And of course, I still dealt with being insecure sometimes. I always thought about how I looked, what I was saying. I remember this time in history class, I was so scared to present because I am honestly scared of presenting still to this day because I overthink still. It's normal. Doesn't mean it's good. It is normal though. But I got up there and it was nerve-wracking. But I did it. And I went back to my seat and I thought about how nobody laughed at me. It was like this turning point in my anxiety because I realized that everybody is more aware of themselves rather than other people, because at the end of the day, people only care about themselves when it comes to these things. And if they hear you mumbling or whatever, they're gonna think about it for 1 second, maybe not. But if they think about it for 1 second, they're gonna forget it. They don't care, they care about themselves. So that's what I realized. That was the theme of my 10th grade year, pretty much. Then came 11th grade, and I remember being in financial literacy one day. I love that class, by the way. I love business, if you didn't know. But I walked into that class. We had a presentation that day. I was really insecure at this time. I don't remember why, but there were a few people in that class that I was not comfortable speaking around, which it's stupid thinking back on it because who cares? But I got up there, I was mumbling, I lost my voice, I almost started crying because it was so embarrassing. I was so intimidated by all these people surrounding me. So I went back to my seat, and this girl, she was so sweet. I had a few classes with her, and she told me that I did a good job, which, like, that is amazing. People who say those things to you when you know that you screwed up, they are amazing, because anxiety is real and it takes over your life. It took over that moment. I just was crying, basically without the tears, in my seat when I went back to sit down. And after she said that, it like changed everything for me in that moment. Like, I was fine because nobody was paying attention. Who wants to listen to somebody present if they're not getting a grade on listening to somebody present, right? Nobody was listening to me, so it was fine. I also started finding myself. This is a huge turning point in my anxiety, by the way, because I finally started finding myself. I started talking to my dad about business because that's my passion. I sat down with him every day at night, talked about some sort of business fundamental or concept. We talked about growth margin to ROI, return on investment, to starting a business, all those fun things. And this started because I wanted to start a business. And of course, I wanted to skip all the fundamentals and important concepts and wanted to skip to the fun part, which is the logo, the tagline, all that fun stuff. But of course, my dad told me to sit down with him. We started talking about business for a month, and one day I came upstairs, we did the same thing, except this time he handed me a book called Confessions of a Serial Salesman by Steve Noodleberg, and I wanted to read it, so I did. It is an amazing book. By the way, you will know this because I have talked about this book a lot. I talked about this book in my second podcast with Steve Noodleberg, who I did that episode with. And so yeah, I read the book and learned a lot from it, which eventually inspired me to start posting on LinkedIn because my dad had started posting on LinkedIn because of Steve Noodleberg. So I started with things about my fundraiser, Golden Hearts for Cancer. If you didn't know, I do have a fundraiser, but I started posting and I was consistent every single day, still am. I took time engaging. I took time thinking about my posts, and honestly, posting on LinkedIn has become a safe space to me, and people have guided me on there. People have taught me things. I have taught myself things through looking at other people's posts and through writing my own posts, because when you put yourself in a vulnerable position in the way that I have, you learn so much about yourself. And this is where I started being confident, because I finally could express myself in a form of writing, and I finally felt like I could just be, which with anxiety, that is like the winning point. That is the finish line. It was an amazing feeling. And eventually I met people through there. Of course, it took time. Nothing is going to happen overnight. Success does not happen over one night. But I met amazing, amazing people. For example, Bernadette Bruce, the executive director of publications at Nova Southeastern University. She showed me around Nova and just talked. It was so genuine. Those are the types of people that I want to be around. And then I met Steve Noodleberg, and we had breakfast at a diner with my dad, and that was amazing. It was so genuine, and just he took the time. Actually, both Bernadette and Steve took the time out of their day to help me. I wasn't going to financially benefit them in any way. I'm 17, right? They did it out of the kindness of their hearts. But that doesn't just happen overnight. You need to put yourself out there. That's what I did. That's what I'm doing. That's what I will do in the future. And LinkedIn, if not LinkedIn, if you don't want to post on LinkedIn, at least start journaling. Start writing in your notes app. Anything you can do to just release your mind. Let it melt out of your body, out of your mind. Because once you let your thoughts out of your mind and put it onto paper, onto the notes app, whatever you want, you take it and you look at it and you are able to see if it's rational or if it's not rational, or if it's irrational, rather. Even if it's not about anxiety, it could be about anything. Just start writing, because that's what I've done. That's what I'm doing still. And it has just cleared my mind. It's an amazing thing to do. So yes, LinkedIn has helped me become extremely confident, and also meeting the people I have been able to meet. Additionally, I don't know why I just said additionally, but so anxiety also has led me to, of course, being insecure, then confident. And now, because I have become more confident, I had the confidence to start this podcast called Quest for Knowledge. And if you didn't know, my tagline on LinkedIn is a student on the quest for knowledge, because I finally want to just learn. That's my intention. Learn how to think, learn whatever, learn about personal development, business, anxiety, all the things. So that's why my podcast is called Quest for Knowledge. But if you asked me 4 years ago if I would have a podcast ever, I would laugh in your face, literally, because it is not easy to put yourself out here like this. But I finally just stopped thinking about what I'm going to say, who I'm going to do it with, what I look like, all these things that are just going to take time before you can ever do anything, because you're never going to be perfect. All you can do is start. And the only way to start is to start, right? That's what I did. And that's why I have a podcast now. And this has helped me become more confident, because I have learned how to just have a conversation. And that was something that I struggled with my entire life. I still struggle with it, to be honest. But it is an amazing thing to do when you put yourself in a vulnerable position. I cannot stress it enough. Put yourself in a vulnerable position where you can learn from others, where you can learn from yourself. So, the main lesson for today is learn to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, which will eventually lead you to becoming the confident version of yourself. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you have an amazing day. Make it your mission to make somebody else smile. Have a great day.